The smell of charcoal, smoked ribs, and fresh burgers drifted through my father's backyard while he laughed beside the grill like he owned the entire neighborhood. Truthfully, maybe he believed he did. Every 4th of July, he threw the biggest cookout on the block. Politicians, wealthy business owners, former athletes, and people he considered important always showed up. And every single year, I was the family disappointment. But what happened when that aircraft landed in his backyard changed everything forever. Before I tell you the full story, take a second to subscribe if you believe daughters deserve respect no matter what career they choose. And comment a red heart below if you've ever had to prove yourself to your own family. I pulled into the driveway wearing faded jeans, sunglasses, and a plain gray t-shirt after driving 6 straight hours from base. The second my father saw me walk through the backyard gate, he rolled his eyes dramatically. "Well," he announced loudly enough for half the guests to hear. "Looks like the government finally gave her a day off." A few people laughed politely. I forced a smile. Same joke. Different year. My younger sister stood near the pool beside her fiancé, looking flawless in a white summer dress. She worked at one of the top law firms downtown and fit perfectly into my father's idea of success. Me? I joined the Marines when I was 20, and according to my father, that meant I'd wasted my potential. "You still doing all that military stuff?" one of his friends asked casually. Before I could even answer, my father laughed again. "She flies around with soldiers pretending she's saving the world." More laughter. Something tightened in my chest. Not because strangers were mocking me, but because my own father enjoyed it so much. He loved making me feel small. As the afternoon went on, I stayed mostly quiet, helping my mom carry trays of food and cleaning tables while conversations floated around me. Real estate, investments, vacation homes, expensive cars. Nobody asked where I'd been the last 11 months. Nobody asked about deployments. Honestly, I preferred it that way. Then my father drank too much whiskey. That's when the sarcasm turned cruel. One of the neighbors asked if I planned to stay in the military long term. Before I could answer, my father snorted loudly. "She's basically a glorified delivery driver wearing combat boots." The backyard erupted with awkward laughter. My face burned instantly. I stared down at my paper plate while memories slammed into my head all at once. Emergency evacuations. Night flights over disaster zones. Pulling families from flooded rooftops during rescue missions. Writing letters to grieving families after operations went wrong. Things my father never cared enough to ask about. He pointed his beer bottle toward me. "You know what her problem is," he said loudly. "She thinks wearing a uniform makes her important." The patio slowly fell silent. Even my mother looked uncomfortable now. But he still wasn't done. "She could have been successful like her sister," he said coldly. "Instead, she chose helicopters and dirt." And suddenly, something inside me just went still. Not anger. Not sadness. Just exhaustion. I was tired. So unbelievably tired. I stood up slowly from my chair. "I should probably head out," I said quietly. My father shrugged. "Probably for the best." Then it happened. At first, it sounded distant. A deep vibration somewhere in the sky. Guests started glancing upward. The sound grew louder fast. Powerful. Heavy. Wind exploded across the lawn. Napkins and paper plates flew everywhere. People grabbed their hats and ducked while the enormous gray V-22 Osprey descended toward the open field behind our property. The noise was deafening. My father stared upward in complete shock. "What the hell is that?" he shouted. The aircraft landed hard enough to shake the ground beneath us. Dust swirled violently across the backyard while the rotors slowly tilted upward. Nobody moved. Nobody even spoke. Then the side hatch opened. 2 Marines stepped out first. Then another. And finally, a senior officer in full uniform climbed down and walked directly toward our yard. Straight toward me. My father looked completely confused now. The officer stopped a few feet in front of me and gave a sharp salute. "Captain," he said respectfully. "We received updated deployment orders. You're needed immediately." The entire barbecue went dead silent. Even the children stopped moving. My father blinked several times like his brain couldn't process what he'd just heard. One of the Marines standing near the aircraft raised his voice over the fading rotor noise. She coordinated civilian evacuations during the Gulf hurricane response last year, he said proudly to the crowd. Saved hundreds of lives. I closed my eyes for a brief second. I hated attention, especially this kind. But the silence surrounding my father felt different now. Heavy. Embarrassed. The same people who laughed at me earlier were now staring at me with stunned respect. My father looked pale. "You're the captain?" he asked quietly. I nodded once. He swallowed hard. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" A sad smile crossed my face. "Because you already decided who I was before you ever bothered to ask." He had no response. None at all. For years, he mocked the very thing that gave my life purpose. And now a military aircraft was sitting behind his house, proving how little he truly understood. The officer glanced back toward the aircraft. "Ma'am, we need to move." I grabbed my bag quietly, then paused before leaving. My father stood beside the grill looking older somehow. Smaller too. And for the first time in my life, I realized something important. Some parents only understand their daughter's value after the rest of the world shows them first.